Hello everyone. Today, Group 5 will be talking about climate change and glacial melting in the Hindu-Kush Himalayas with particular focus on causes, impacts, and mitigation strategies. So, before going any further, let us discuss what exactly is the problem that we're dealing with. Well, over the course of Earth's history, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels have oscillated, and in the pre-industrialization era, it has reached about 280 parts per million. And subsequently, there has been an increase in an oscillating pattern. And very recently, the increase has been ever so high, steadily crossing well beyond the 300 mark. So, as you can see here through this short clip, the levels in the recent few years have steadily been increasing across the different seasons, across different points in the world. You can see that data here has been collected from multiple points around the world, and it's increasing at an ever so fast rate. Now, it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that what is causing this global warming, and United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in its fifth assessment concluded confidently that human activities in the past 50 years have warmed our planet. Now, you might be wondering what exactly are these human activities? Well, it's the act of industrialization, and post the industrialization era, we have been consuming a lot of fossil fuels, burning them left, right, and center. There has been extensive deforestation, and all of these have been prominent contributors to human induced climate change. And a consequence of this climate change is glacial melting. And as you can see here through this clip, the glaciers are melting very fast, the lines are receding, and they're melting into waters. And this is from an ice survey that was done and taken from CNN. The region of interest for us for our report is the Hindu-Kush Himalayas. Now, the Hindu-Kush Himalayas is referred to as the third pole because after the North Pole and the South Pole, it has the single largest snow cover. It extends up to 4.2 million square kilometers across 8 different countries, and it gives rise to 10 major river basins. Now, the mountains and hills in the Hindu-Kush Himalayas are home to nearly 240 million people. The river basins below them, which I just mentioned about, supports another 1.7 billion people in the mainland, providing them with energy resources, with food resources, and water resources. Now, the food resources that I mentioned further supports additionally 3 billion more people. And it's also important to note that this region of Hindu-Kush Himalaya spans so much in terms of diversity of its vegetation, precipitation, livelihood, and culture, whether we go from east to west or north to south. And it's very crucial to preserve this. And it's very crucial to understand how all of these get impacted by the receding glaciers. Now, it is one of the most sensitive hotspots to global climate change based on its location, and the impact climate change has had on this region is very clearly manifested, and it's rising at a very rapid rate. Now, because of this and because of the fact that it supports so many people, it's extremely crucial for us to actively engage in mitigation strategies effectively and immediately. And even if everything works out, international collaborations manages to meet the ideal target and restrict global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The glaciers in this region are expected to retreat by 35% by the end of this century, and this is going to have devastating impact on the food, on the economy, on the flora and fauna that exists in this region. Now, in our assessment, in our report, we are discussing the causes of the receding glaciers, what is the effect on the landscape, what are the economic consequences, what are the consequences on livelihood, flora, fauna, diversity, what are the mitigation strategies that we can take to help improve the situation, which is devastated right now, and how policy reforms can play a very important role in guiding this mitigation strategies. So, over to the next parts where we will be discussing causes.
In order to tackle this urgent climate change and glacier receding problem in the Hindu-Kush Himalayas, which we saw has the potential to affect billions of people, it is important to note what exactly is causing the climate change in this region. A primary culprit for climate change is air pollution, and this is not only from sources in the Hindu-Kush Himalaya region, but also from surrounding regions, all the way to even Central Asia and the Middle East. The sources may be natural, such as dust from the nearby Thar and Taklimakan deserts, or forest and scrub fires from the foothills. However, they can also be man-made, such as fossil fuel use in brick kilns and industries in the plains, and emissions from the transport and energy sectors. Another major contributor is the practice of post-harvest burning of crop stubs, which is followed in the agricultural areas in the plains, which has led to smogs in many places upwind of the plains. All of these factors and sources together have led to higher air pollution in the Hindu-Kush Himalaya regions, with effects such as a higher fog frequency, which has gone up almost 3 times in a span of less than 40 years. An important aspect of this air pollution is black carbon, which is a product of incomplete combustion of fossil fuels and has been shown to be one of the dominant sources of glacial degradation in the Hindu-Kush Himalayas. This is because it speeds up the rate of glacier melt by raising the air temperature by absorbing sunlight and decreasing the precipitation rate by increasing cloud lifetime. In regions such as the Hindu-Kush Himalayas where snow cover is abundant, black carbon also gets deposited on the ice, decreasing its reflectance and further increasing the rate of glacial melt. Almost 45 to 66% of anthropogenic black carbon deposition in the region is due to industry, mostly brick kilns, and residential burning of solid fuels, with another small fraction attributed to on-road diesel fuels. However, this is also a source of hope because black carbon is a short-lived climate pollutant and perhaps can be easily checked with regulations on fossil fuel combustion and emission. And we'll see more of this in the mitigation strategy section. Another important change that has been seen in the Hindu-Kush Himalayas, which could cause its problems, are the summer monsoons. Now, these are very important to the climate of the Hindu-Kush Himalayas, with over 70% of annual rainfall being from the summer monsoons. However, in recent years, the monsoons have become variable and undependable. There are several hypotheses for this. One of these is the surface dimming effect, where a thick haze of dust, black carbon, fly ash, and other components is transported from southern Asia towards the Indian Ocean annually during the dry season. This reduces the amount of sunlight that can reach the ocean's surface, which in turn lowers the evaporation rates and leads to reduced moisture transport during the peak of monsoon season. Another important effect is the elevated heat pump, which actually strengthens the monsoons and acts antagonistically to the surface dimming effect. Here, aerosols build up over the Himalayan foothills before the summer monsoon, and these aerosol buildups are vertically advected to elevated altitudes against the southern slopes of the Himalayas. This in turn causes increased warming and enhanced moisture influx from the Indian Ocean, which helps strengthen the summer monsoon. More data is needed to figure out how exactly these two effects work to cause and may be disturbed to cause abnormal monsoons. Such variable summer monsoons have resulted in faster glacial receding in most of this region, with an uneven impact on the water supply across different locations. Another cause is westerly disturbances. Now, these are winds originating from the Mediterranean region. These cool, moist winds strike the Himalayas and cause winter precipitation. And this precipitation is important as they are believed to increase the mass of glaciers in the Karakoram and Western Himalayas. When a westerly disturbance nears the region, wind speeds decrease over the plains, leading to a buildup of pollution. As this westerly disturbance moves east away from the national capital region, strong westerly winds sweep through, cleaning up the polluted air. Due to climate change in the last few decades, however, the western disturbances have become lighter, and due to this generally warmer air, they are rising to higher altitudes in this region. This causes erratic and less precipitation, while also increasing the temperature at these altitudes, causing less replenishment of the glaciers, which kind of forms a vicious cycle. Another cause of climate change in this region, which has intensified these adverse effects, is the mountain spring heat island effect. Here, because the Himalayan mountains are mainly snow and ice covered for a greater part of the year, these areas also have a lower ambient temperature than that of exposed ground due to their lower albedo and higher reflectance. However, in lately, due to climate change, since spring has been arriving earlier and earlier each year due to rising winter temperatures, the snow line has also been receding earlier and earlier, reducing the time span of this cooling effect of snowy areas, and this in turn compounds to raise temperatures even higher in what can only be a positive feedback effect and a vicious cycle. Now that we've seen causes of climate change in this region, we can move on to the impact that these causes have.
Now that we have looked into the causes of glacial melting in the Hindu-Kush region, let us look at a few impacts that glacial melting will have. We notice that there are a lot of environmental impacts such as change in the flora and fauna of the region, changes in soil composition, formation of glacial lakes, multi-hazard events, water flow and availability issues as well. We also note that there are quite a few sociological impacts. There's a shift in the livelihood of the people living there. There's a change in the health of the people living there. We'll also see how tourism and energy sector has been impacted. When we talk of river flow, we notice a few things. We notice that the river basins on the eastern side of the Hindu-Kush region, such as the Ganga-Brahmaputra basin, it remains relatively stable because it is supplied with a constant monsoon rainfall. But the western basins are heavily dependent on snow and glacial melt, like the Indus River basin, which is at the risk of drying out in the dry season because 40% of its water volume is supplied by glacial waters. Significant concern in the Hindu-Kush region has also been the formation of glacial lakes. In the Himalayas, the natural barriers of rubble and stone trap huge amounts of glacial meltwater, causing the formation of these lakes. The accelerating rate of snow and ice melt in the Himalayas has led to the water accumulating in these lakes to grow swiftly. The moment these natural dams of rubble holding the water at bay fail, a devastating tsunami of mud, water, and ice sweeps through the valley, which leads to catastrophic consequences for local communities and the infrastructure. Lake Imja, which is shown here in the picture, is a glacial lake near Mount Everest, and it poses a striking example of the issue mentioned. The permafrost in the region is also melting due to the rising temperatures. A primary concern in the Himalayas has been the continuous creation of many glacial lakes. Natural barriers of rubble and stone trap huge amounts of glacial meltwater, causing the formation of these lakes. The accelerating rate of snow and ice melt in the Himalayas has led to the water accumulating in these lakes to grow swiftly. The moment these natural dams of rubble holding the water at bay fail, a devastating tsunami of mud, water, and ice sweeps through the valley, which leads to catastrophic consequences for local communities and infrastructure. One such example would be Lake Imja, which is a glacial lake near Mount Everest. Here in the picture, you can see a glacial lake formation due to the retreating glaciers in the Bhutanese Himalayas. Another concern is the melting of the permafrost. Permafrost is a continuously frozen layer, which is melting right now due to rising temperatures, making the soil mushy. As the permafrost thaws, the soils become spongy and leading to increased difficulty in building new infrastructure such as roads and railroads. This softening of the soil leads to more landslides and falling rocks, which further damages the region. A big concern with the Hindu-Kush region, and for many of the countries in the Hindu-Kush region actually, is that they are multi-hazard environments, where areas susceptible to one kind of disaster often experience multiple disasters. The landslides which occur in this region form natural dams that eventually breach and thus leading to flash floods. Similarly, earthquakes can trigger both landslides and flash floods. Such multi-hazard environments are only expected to increase in the Hindu-Kush region with increasing destabilization of the region. Moreover, These multi-hazard environments are often major corridors to urban expansion, making a disproportionately large number of people in the Hindu-Kush region susceptible to hazards. Let us look at a few recent disasters in the Himalayas. In February 2021, there was flooding in Chamoli, Uttar Pradesh. In 2013, there were flash floods in Kedarnath. In 2021 again, there was a breaking away of part of the Nanda Devi Glacier. And in 2013, there was a cloudburst at Kedarnath. If we look here carefully, we see that there has been a lot of flooding, flash floods, and cloudbursts, which are only going to increase as climate change happens. Notice here in the graph that over the course of the last 2000 years, we have had quite a lot of catastrophic events, but the growth was quite linear. But suddenly, over the last few years, the growth has been seen to be exponential, which is very worrisome, as this means that we'll have a lot more catastrophic events in the region. Now let us look at the impact on flora and fauna. The Hindu-Kush region is one of the world's most biodiverse region, but it is destined to lose up to 87% of its original habitat by 2100. As glaciers recede, foreign species are going to outcompete the exotic endemic species. The glacial melting is going to affect the duration and extremity of the seasons, which will disrupt the life cycle of the endemic species. The rising water temperatures and the water levels will affect the fish and the aquatic plants, which will in turn affect the birds that rely on them for food. When we focus our attention to the communities living in this region, we notice a few things. We notice that the livelihood of the people in the mountains largely depend on agriculture. Agriculture productivity is already very low due to the rugged terrain and the small land holdings. And due to the high altitude and short summer, only single cropping is feasible most of the time. Glacial melting will only add to the problems due to flooding leading to crop failure. Excessive flooding is likely to be followed by bouts of drought, which would again affect the agriculture and income as well as food security of the people. Alternative income diversification is also very tough in the mountains. The impact of climate change on agriculture is forcing out migration of usually the males of the household to urban regions to look for alternative jobs. This also brings about a different kind of challenge. It brings about a new set of vulnerabilities for those who are left behind, the women, children, and the elderly. If you look carefully, the hydroelectric power is the major source of energy in these regions. Unavailability of water out of flooding will have huge repercussions on the energy production in the region. Here we can see that 20 kilometers west of Nanda Devi, when the flash flood killed more than 200 people, destroyed entire villages, and swept away 2 hydroelectric projects. The satellite images are a clear evidence of this fact. If you look at the impact on the health of the people, climate change is affecting the health of the mountain communities by contaminating the water sources and the extremities and the weather conditions. Poor health is leading to low productivity and low income, and this is hitting the communities really hard. If we look at the impact on tourism, we see that tourism has served as an alternative source of income aside from agriculture in the mountains. But frequent and unexpected calamities like floods, landslides, and hurricanes are likely to have a huge impact on the influx of tourists into the hills. And this industry and the people depending on it for income are also going to be impacted. After looking at the impacts that glacial melting is going to have on the environment and the people living in the Hindu-Kush region, a natural question to ask is there something we can do? Are there certain measures that we can take to tackle this problem? This is what we are going to discuss next, the mitigation strategies and policy reforms that need to be adopted as soon as possible and at a large scale if we are to tackle this problem efficiently.
Few general mitigation strategies are to identify the vulnerable river basins in the region. So these are the basins which are especially prone to the mountain spring heat island effect, and they have in these basins there are dangerous consequences to the ecological and hydrometeorological regimes of the regions, and it's obviously important to identify such regions. Another one is to prolong the duration of the winter snow cover through simple techniques such as pits and trenches, snowfall pits and trenches, snow rakes, and snow catchment dams. This also has the advantage of acting as avalanche control, which is obviously important. The third technique is to artificially reduce the surface reflectivity of the region through painting the rooftops and a lot of built structures white. This reduces the surface temperatures, and therefore prolonging winter snow cover and causing and reducing the winter mountain spring heat island effect. The other thing is to manage the wastage heat in these high altitude regions, especially the tourist locales, where there is high vehicular traffic and a lot of wastage heat from cookhouses or dhabas. And this is possible to combat through controlling tourism and traffic, and by providing alternative options for vehicles such as hybrid, electric, or CNG vehicles. And we can also provide ropeways and electrical cable cars in these high tourist destinations as well. And this has the added advantage of boosting the tourist economy of the region. Another interesting idea which has come around recently is the concept of carbon capture and sequestration. This idea is that when we release carbon dioxide in generation of electricity and in industrial processes, we capture the carbon dioxide in the form of carbonates, which are then stored deep underground. This obviously reduces the emission of carbon dioxide in the region and can also reduce the black carbon released into the region by having cleaner emissions. And another idea along a similar vein is afforestation, where we just plant more trees which absorb the carbon dioxide in the region. And another important point is to improve the awareness amongst the local communities about the impacts of climate change and how to overcome. And so now I will be talking about how to improve the resilience of these local communities. So one of the important ideas is to center policy around these indigenous people rather than centering it around how the corporate market works. So, and this has already been shown to be successful through the usage of snow stupas in Ladakh, which has been incredibly useful to ensure the availability of drinking water and water during the dry months. Another important direction is to improve the development of local infrastructure in the form of provision of drinking water, irrigation channels, farm to market roads, disaster risk reduction works, and other such things. This will improve both the economy and the resiliency of the economy of the region, making it easier for people to not have to go through disasters or to mitigate the impact of disasters which are occurring. And as I already said, improving awareness is key to all of this, as it helps people know about programs and other such things and methods they themselves can do, especially if you're centering policy around these people. Another important idea and concept is clean energy. Obviously, in the future is all about renewable energy sources to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide. And this region has high potential for multiple such sources of energy, including solar, hydropower, wind power, and geothermal energy. Particularly hydropower is especially strong in the region with multiple rivers with high differential elevation, and the energy is estimated to be on the order of 500 gigawatts. However, the current energy economy in the region is still rather weak. This is due to low per capita consumption of energy, as well as high usage of biomass, as well as a lot of generally low, weaker economy of the region. This needs to be boosted before we can talk about producing more energy in the region. However, there is already enough demand for such energy that such projects would be useful. Important point, however, for hydropower is that we need to ensure that we stabilize the region in some sense, because of the increase in global temperatures are resulting in unstable water flow from some of these glacial melt and erratic precipitation, which can cause issues for hydropower projects in the region. And we need to ensure that there are strong measures to encourage the use of such renewable energy through various measures, through subsidies or other such things, and improving awareness, especially for things like solar. And of course, we need to perform more research on improving the efficiency of the consumption of energy and the production also to some stage. And this which would decrease emission levels in general. Another important point is to improve the research and cooperation amongst the nearby communities and countries. And because climate change is not region specific or country specific, we need to have communication between countries. This is especially important because one of the major issues around the ideas of policy change for the region is that we do not have a lot of information about the region. This is due to multiple reasons. One is lack of funding for the region. So a lot of studies are severely underfunded and are unable to get enough work done, and there are not enough studies about the region and the glaciers and the current state of the glaciers. The other point is the data that we do have is often split amongst multiple countries like India, China, and Pakistan, and there are not enough channels for the communication, which and cooperation and facilitation of the transfer of data. So effectively, each country is working with lesser data than they could be, which is of course impacting the research of this region. So we need to come together as different nations to improve the research and the cooperation of this region. There needs to also be facilitation of communication of the people within the country and with across countries and across borders in this region to build adaptive strength so that we can facilitate against climate change. And regional governments should also come together, especially in the case when we are looking at water management policies, so that we can efficiently use water across multiple regions, especially when multiple regions are looking at common basins that they have between them, so that we can have uniform policies. So these countries need to work together, share their technology, share their data, and have common policies. Common policies are especially useful because it's not a great idea of on one side of the basin, one country is trying to do something, and on the other side of the basin, another country is going to do the opposite. So obviously, we need to have common policies. And as I stated before, we need more monitoring of the glaciers and establishing centers for such monitoring, uh, so that we can identify the most important regions and develop more targeted mitigation strategies and have early warning systems for disasters.
In conclusion, the Hindu-Kush region has undergone numerous changes in the past years due to climate change, creating an urgent need to deal with the consequences of glacial retreat. The effects of glacial melt have far-reaching repercussions. Some of the physical impacts are glacial lake formation, melting permafrost, and changes in river water flow. The sociological impacts also cannot be understated, as excessive flooding and droughts leads to a destabilization of the livelihoods of mountain communities and the ecosystem as a whole. Some local and central efforts are being made to mitigate the problems and to address the root causes, but these are currently insufficient. Rapid, radical, and concerted action is the need of the hour, and all countries involved must put aside differences and enact transboundary policies to prevent further damage. Otherwise, very soon, the situation may be beyond recovery.